second. I'm waiting because the recording is still looking like it's in progress on my side and not started. So not sure if you're seeing something else.
It's showing as a recording on my screen.
Okay, I think now we started. So let's start the meeting. We have this agenda. We only had Postgres here with another suggestion by Jenya here. This is some things from last time that we had on the agenda. I just copied here. And but I want to start from the question from Patrick. And the question was, can we add annotations to the endpoint CR? I think we want to. I understand the use case, and the use case is that set logging for the, was that specifically Kibana or Logstash or whatever?
Kibana. I think we use Kibana as a front end and have Logstash in the back end and Elastic Stack.
Elk, right? For Elk. Okay, got it. So you're using, by the way, is it some, just to get the understanding of this use case, is it some annotation specifically that Kibana uses? Then when Kibana gets this information, it automatically understands something about it? Or is it something that you hook up this way?
I'm not sure. Quentin, do you know?
I'm not sure how it's done in detail, but I think it's just for signaling some services in the background that this specific container shall be logged. And so it's just for selecting the right container.
Oh, so it's like a selector for which pods should be even collected, for example?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
I think it's more like a normal use case for different situations where some other tools have some config via annotations.
Yeah, of course. I do want to be specific, not because this is not a general case, but because I think the specific use case is sometimes more helpful to in later on in discussions. But in any case, just also it's interesting to understand for us. I think by implementing this, how can we now sort of like provide maybe an explanation how to integrate with Elk, right?
I don't think you need to need to do something specific.
Yeah.
So it's just like pause through the annotations.
Got it. Yeah.
I just wanted to ask, so just to understand the request here, so you want to have a way to pass annotations through the NooBaa CR to the endpoints, for example, the endpoints deployment. Is this the
yeah, exactly
request? Okay, so basically it's not specific to the endpoints deployment, just a way to specify I want this annotation on this component.
Yeah, and it should show up in the pod template and not just in the deployment template. So if the annotation is just set on the deployment level, it won't be useful for us. So it needs to be set on the pod, so in the pod template.
Yeah, right, of course. But yeah, I think the one thing I'm mostly wondering about these type of requests is this. So we are by now having a bunch of things we propagate, right? So we deploy pods, right? Or these different types of deployments, stateful sets, whatever we need for the service to run, and then we get a lot of customization requests where some use case wants to set like this thing. So we had like storage classes, and we have resource usage. We now have annotations. We probably have more, right? And these things kind of, I think that they become general, right? That generalize that a lot of operators or CRs like that deploy pods are required to provide some level of like a lot of levels of customizations on these workloads to the administrators. So I'm wondering if we just need to have some something about like when I want to create, when I have something that controls pods, if we have like endpoints, core, database, etc., right? So we want to have some general structure, which will be pod custom, some like customizations, and then we can have that for our different, like we can set it up for everything that we set up as a pod eventually.
For example, Stormzy does use this. They have a complete pod template, so you can set everything in the pod template via the CR for Kafka.
Yeah, so I'm beginning to think that it doesn't really make sense that we will control so much of the pod when, you know, we might want to provide defaults whenever like there's no customizations, something that works, but in many cases there are customizations. So maybe for the pod template cases, we can try to see if we can get like 3 pod templates, right? Full pod templates in our CR, or maybe not full, but partial, right? Something that we can merge into our default or something like that.
Yeah, the more options you have, the better.
It just feels like, you know, there are some customizations which we might consider as, you know, not good practices, but maybe in general, you know, if somebody really wants to set something, it's okay to allow it. And you know,
Yeah.
the problem, you know, is that as an API, you know, the CR, the effect of things that we, you know, get but do not allow is harder to document, but we should do that. Or maybe we can do this. We support these cases. I don't know, but anyway, I think it will be more useful anyway to just pass through a lot of template fields that are required in general. What do you think, Danny? Somebody else?
Yeah, so regarding annotations on running pods, I assume that we won't have the issue of editing annotations on running pods, right? We won't need to redeploy the pods because annotation is something that is allowed by the Kubernetes to be edited on a running pod, right?
Yeah, but I think you want them to reapply in cases where the pod dies or something. You don't want to keep monitoring it, I guess.
Monitoring what? The template?
No, the pod. If you edit the pod manually or through some automation.
No, but the question is this: you want to have a deployment for NooBaa, right? And the way you specify deployment for NooBaa is by, you know, keeping a NooBaa CR, like some YAML of the NooBaa CR that you want to deploy, right?
Yeah.
And I think the desire is that this CR will describe the NooBaa deployment as best as it can be, right? Of course, it can be done in other ways, but I think that the ask is this: we want to customize how NooBaa deployment works using the CR, and I think that makes sense, right? And even I would even generalize it to make sense even wider, right, for any type of pod customization at this point, because we kind of see this as very general. Now, it's true that you can always run your, you know, some deployment flow and then edit things which are not then the operator should not be changing usually, or, you know, you expect it not to change maybe, but then still I think the desire is to maybe just have it in the CR. But let's make sure. Patrick, do you think editing the annotations later makes any sense in your use case?
So you mean after deployment, editing it manually?
Either manually or, you know, scripted, kind of like in any case, in any deployment tool that you use for that. I'm not sure if that's the case that you use.
We could do that, but because we are using GitOps, I'd really prefer if we could just write it down in the
YAML.
CR.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. And do you use any specifics? Did you say Argo CD or?
Yeah,
Argo
we're
CD.
using Argo CD.
Yeah. Does that answer it, Jenny?
Well, I've kind of asked something else, but yeah, sure. You can place an arbitrary like array of some sort of annotations on your CR, and then the reconciler will just apply those annotations to the running pod. What I asked is that, as far as I know, we have some limitations of adding, changing specs of running pods. So if the annotations are at the metadata and not in the spec, then they can be applied. But if it is a spec change, then each reconcile that will need to change the annotations, it will need to redeploy the whole pods. So this is what I was saying. So as far as they are in the metadata, then there is no problem. You won't have any restarts to run in existing pods and stuff when you change the CR. This is just something that we need to make sure whether we will need to restart services or not when we want to annotate on changes.
I'm sure. I'm sure there's right. So applying pod templates update. We should just so we will, in many cases, we apply it to another controller like the stateful set or the deployment. But even in cases we run the pods ourselves, we need to make the decision whether we decide to restart the pod or not based on the reconcile that we're doing, right?
Yes, this is what I've meant. So there's a consideration for that, but I don't see any major or any problems or problematic things with that. So it shouldn't be something hard to implement. And if you really need this metric done, I assume it's not a lot of work at all.
Yeah, from my point of view, it doesn't matter if the pods restart because it's already a rolling update. So I don't care if they restart. If I change the NooBaa CR, I'm guessing it will restart the pods, so it doesn't matter. It's normally not something that happens while in production run. It's just more like something when you set up NooBaa, then it will have these annotations from the start on. So it's not for me, it's not an issue if the pods restart.
Yeah, cool. I just wanted to make sure about that, so we will know that we have both of the options, right, in case we need them.
Okay, I think the best will be, first of all, after we kind of understand the story around it, which is great now. I think the best will be to have an issue open, and then we can track it and try to push it in the plans, right? So Patrick, if you want, I would be happy to open it, but I think I would love it if you do, and then we can.
I can absolutely. I'll do it tomorrow if that's okay.
Yeah, of course. Thank you very much. Okay, great.
You're welcome.
So do you want to raise any other issues you've been having or questions?
Yeah, maybe a small one. We have seen some issues with the UI. So if we have a lot of function calls, so the trigger is coming for, let's say, 500 or 5,000 times, we have a very laggy UI, or even it crashes after a lot of events that happened. So do you have seen such behavior in your test setup as well, or is it in planning that you want to remanufacture some parts of the UI and especially the monitoring of the triggers?
Is it specifically when you get to the graphs? Is that where the UI is laggy? You mean?
Yeah, right.
Okay.
Right, especially then. But after this border of about 5,000 events, the whole UI is very laggy or even not responsive.
Got it. Even regardless of that specific page, you mean? Okay.
Right.
I see. And is it so? Is this an accumulated count or something related to a time frames? Like rate? What did you mean? When you accumulate 5,000 invocations?
Right. So we made some tests with some batch uploads, and we have seen about 5,000 events or trigger calls in about 30 minutes. And so the whole 5,000 count was, well, we planned to see it in the UI, but the UI wasn't responsive at that moment. So we could see at least 4,000 to 4,500, and then it stops.
Got it. Okay. So first of all, I'm not aware of this, and actually, from the point of view, I think of Red Hat, this is not yet tested in their, I think in their coverage, but from the point of view of what you're saying, I'm pretty sure I can sense that this is around the statistics where the pressure is starting to get there. I'm not sure what, but I can certainly figure out once we get to that point. One thing that can help with that would be the server logs, or maybe even
Sure.
we also have a diagnostics that we can get from the UI as well, which then captures some of the UI state in it,
Yeah,
like logging state.
We try to find some traces what happened in this moment exactly, but right now we just have seen that the UI is not responsive, and we're not sure where the problem is coming from in detail. So I just wanted to know if you have seen something in the past as well, or if we are the first that have tried something like this. And
I think it seems like that getting to these numbers might, like, it's been tested, of course, before, but we haven't been able to get it into a CI, for example. So we are certainly not tracking any of these kind of stability metrics. So I can tell you, yeah, this this has been working in like last version, for example, right? So that's too bad for us, but but I think so. Yeah, I think that's the situation. So I don't have information for you this one of how to solve, but I can certainly try to figure out what's the case.
Maybe we can open an issue as well, so we can give you some additional information on our test setup and what we changed to the noobaa-core endpoints, and what effects might be linked to this as well. Because we've adapted some of the settings as well, because we are using this triggers very heavily right now, and so our endpoints are pretty big. So we use 8 core, for example, for all the function calls that are coming up in short terms. And so there might be some links as well.
I see. But so first of all, I think that will be the great path for us to work on that. But also, I can suggest that you make it like a create it easily, right? Don't invest too much in putting all the information, because I assume you have customizations, and it's okay, you can write it, note that as well. But I think the main thing would be for us to kind of walk through some pinpointing. It doesn't really matter if it's in your customizations or in the core. I'd still be able to help with how to find where this is. And the team, I hope, will be involved and then finding out what's like, where to look, and then you can compare and say, okay, so in this code we changed something, or
Sure.
So I want it to be easier for you just to open so you can open them up without all the information, and we can start iterating through.
Sure.
Okay, great.
I'll have a question regarding, I assume that, like you said, is your function, the Lambda function that you are actually running, is it heavy on resources? Did you limit it? Or I assume you're not out of resources, right?
Yeah, sure. We have seen some out of resources problematics in the past, so we increased the requests for our endpoints, and right now we see a heavy load, but no out of resources. And we have some pretty big Lambda functions running there. For example, we use it to have a connection to Kafka and so on. But right now it's not a resource problem, but it's something happening in the background, and we don't see exactly where it happens.
All right, I understand. Because from the code, what I've seen, that we even if you have lots of parallel calls, we still have a semaphore on the Lambda, and we don't trigger a lot of Lambdas in parallel. So it shouldn't be too heavy, but I just wanted to make sure that you actually have the resources in your cluster, because if you take up all of the resources using the Lambda or using some other things, then obviously it affects the metadata server, and your front end won't be able to get quick responses from it, right? So this is why I've asked it. But if you're saying that you have lots of resources and everything is fine, then we should investigate it, obviously.
So maybe it's an option to propagate the resources the pod is getting down to the function calls. So you can say this function needs 200 megabytes RAM. So do we have this in requests, or are we missing something and have to wait till we can start another call? So I don't know if this is an option for you.
You have this option right now. When you create a Lambda function, you have the option to cap it on memory and on CPU, if I'm not mistaken. If you create the function from the UI.
Yeah. I mean, for parallel spawning. So when you are spawning the functions, you should see how many RAM is available for the pod, and then you can say, yeah, we can spawn another parallel function call, or we can't.
Yes, I understand. But what I saw from, from the code right now is that we actually have a semaphore of one serial, so it shouldn't be a problem. It's not like we trigger lots of, and since you are running on Kubernetes, and I assume you have one endpoint pod, then this means that you have one agent for the functions, which means that you're running the lambdas serially, like one by one.
No, wait. I'm not sure. Wait. So these lambdas are triggered from the endpoints, right?
Right.
But then the execution doesn't occur. So did you change anything to get them to execute on the endpoints, or did we support it?
We didn't adopt anything on this side. We just limited the size reservation for each process. So maybe you remember we limited the sizes to 20 or to 32 or even less megabyte for the resources.
So the reason I'm asking is just because now I'm thinking that I think that what happens is that the invocations run. I'm not sure.
Right.
I think they run in the core, and then I don't think. Do we have a semaphore for invocations? Is that what you saw?
I saw that we have a loading serial for the load, but yeah, it kind of. I mean, when you load the function, but I'm not sure if it handles also the reads.
So we run a lot of invocations in parallel, of course, but so we don't have a semaphore in that sense. But I think what Patrick is saying is pretty correct. I mean, what we should have had there is that we have a semaphore with the amount of memory we can consume for functions, and then we should allocate from that to get another function in like the invocation before it starts. So we don't have it, but I think that's a good thing that we're missing from this. But the other cases for you guys, I think you're using it pretty heavily, and we once had a very good model for it actually, but it relies on what we call agents, and these agents were deployed with the the PV pools. And in your case, I'm not sure if you're using it.
Not that I know that we are using this. We are just using the standard master stuff. So
namespace,
I thought, namespace. So I thought I saw multiple threads of function calls on the endpoints. So I'm quite sure the function runs on the endpoint and not on the core.
Okay. So that's interesting. So maybe what we did do there is include it with the metadata servers that run on the endpoints, and then let's see if that's the case. If we did, then it's good. I'm just looking at the endpoint code for a second. If it loads, it runs metadata server. Does it also start the function services there? So I assume you're right, because you probably would have noticed if it didn't work this way, right?
Yeah, because there would be 5,000 calls on the core, and it would go mayhem.
Yeah, we can see pretty heavy the load on the endpoints, so
CPU and all, right?
Yeah, right. So we can track
so
it.
It's pretty clear.
Yeah, you're all right, guy. We don't have any semaphores on the forking of the processes, but we do have a semaphore of one on the read for the function itself. So yeah.
But I think this is just reading. I think this is just loading the package or something.
Loading the package, the function itself, but the functions actually trigger in parallel. And if you have 5,000 invocations during a span of like 30 minutes, which I assume takes up all of your
but it runs. But Jenny, if it runs in the endpoint, how is it related to the core?
So the thing is that because it runs in the endpoint, I assume that it takes up, lots of like resources from the cluster itself, and maybe the core pod.
But they allocated it separately.
Yeah, I know.
Right. Yeah.
I'm trying to. I'm just like shooting. I'm not sure yet.
No, good.
So,
It's okay, but I'm not sure if I'm seeing the connection yet. Right? It's okay if we did have load on the core. So maybe that's one thing we kind of, you can verify. If you see an increased CPU or memory, of course, but load on the part of the core, that might, give us a hint about, okay, so how do we get to excess CPU here?
Yeah, we can keep an eye on the core as well. But as far as I remember, during our last tests we made, we didn't see big load changes on the core, only in the endpoints.
Okay.
So I'm pretty sure we are not running out of resources in the core.
Okay. Got it. So yeah, I see it now. It's actually in a file called md server.ds, where we start all the metadata services, whether it's in the endpoint or the core. We started there, and we use the object services, function services, both on the endpoint. So both are running that. Yeah, so that's good. That will be spreading the load. So that's good. But still, we don't know where's the UI. So one thing I told you in the beginning, I think it might be the stats thing for the UI specifically. It might be not even in the server side. It might be only browser side issue. Maybe not. I'm not sure, but maybe we can try to make some more progress on this. So it will be good if you can open the issue, and I think we'll get to the details.
In order to understand if it's just a scale issue with the UI, it will be quite easy to test locally, because you don't need any resources or something. You just need to trigger lots of applications. So
right. We just need to load that to even just mock that and create whatever like we suspect, if it's the function stats thing or whatever functions. How many functions do you run? Different functions do you deploy?
It's only one function. So this function is called
generic one with parameters.
Right. So it uses all the event information and creates some well-formed event out of this.
Got it. Okay, great. Okay.
Alternatively, if you want to completely redesign the structure of the events you were talking about, native eventing, we would also be happy if you could produce a Kafka event out of this.
Right, and is a Kafka event? But the point is that the function itself does any logic, or is it just pass through of the event?
Right
Currently,
now,
we are just passing through.
No, it does both. So we do some metadata work, or we pass it to an event source.
Mm-hmm. So you read some metadata, you mean?
Right.
Okay, so you need to collect some information from the system on. So you're using, let's say it differently. You're using the fact that we have some eventing, that you can do that on the platform itself, and then extract the exact information you needed. On the other hand, you could have done that in any like eventing differently to get the information.
Right, exactly.
The one thing I would say that is somewhat of a you get here for free and you didn't notice it, is that your function gets there's an integrated identity inside of NooBaa for functions and objects. So you can set your function to be running with a specific identity, like an account inside of NooBaa. Whereas when you've needed, like if we need to run that outside, you had to give that configuration of how to authenticate to that. But it's pretty much you can do that. It's pretty much how you connect microservices all the time. So you probably have to do it anyway.
Yeah, that's what we're using. We are currently, if I'm not mistaken, Quentin, we are generating unique ID and then adding this to the metadata of the object. Right. And after this, we are sending a Kafka event with all the information.
Yeah. And altering the file object triggers a second functions. So it's not in the ideal way. So the ideal way for us would be if we could have some feature to on the fly add some metadata while the file is uploaded. This would be a huge improvement on our pipeline as well. So like a custom metadata flag that can be set by the user. And after that, we only use one small function to create the events, or in the future, if you support it, we have Knative eventing on the fly directly.
Yeah. So you're saying that these are two distinct use cases, the one that is pushing metadata to the object versus the one that's pulling events out to Kafka?
Right. Yeah.
Okay. So pushing events, or let's say metadata to events, and this one would be to edit object metadata. On put or something, or after put, right?
Only adding UUIDs in this specific case, yeah.
Oh yeah. Okay. So you mean?
We also thought about adding this feature, adding some metadata while the upload is happening directly in the core, but it was just a small idea on our side.
Yeah, I mean it's totally possible as a customization, right? But the only question is how do we want to design customizations? Of course, that if you get to a level where you understand the system, you can customize it pretty easily. But for anybody who's first timer starting to work with something, it's going to be pretty difficult to get into that layer. So, question is how can we design any customization of this sort? But I think I think the use cases are the ones that highlight exactly what can we do here, right? Because the metadata to objects, this can be just like a even a feature, right? You can say, well, I want UUIDs. That we can do that, right? It's easy.
Right.
And if it's such a small requirement which doesn't really require so much of a plugin system for it or anything like that, maybe that's enough. For pushing metadata, yeah, I mean, pushing the object metadata, like the custom metadata and all the rest of the headers and all that, it's pretty simple, of course. If there's more logic around it, like I'm not sure if you do have it, but if it's just in a per object kind of operation, that whenever an object gets it represents something complete, so that you can get the metadata and then it's enough as an event, and you don't need to collect maybe more things. Maybe sometimes read the data. I'm not sure if you have cases where you have some information inside the objects that you need, which is metadata, but is
Right now we only rely on metadata.
Yeah, okay. The object is happening down the line. Then it's not done in the NooBaa function.
Okay, I see.
So just for your background, we see some issues if we have multiple uploads of the same file with the same name. So we have the same object in the S3 store, but we have to distinguish if it is the right event from the right timestamp we got, and we can only distinguish if we give it some UUID. At the moment, it was uploaded, and so this is why we need it.
Okay.
In this specific case, yeah.
Got it. Okay. Okay. I think it's a good time to move forward. I think by opening an issue, we'll get our thoughts right, and we can get some ideas out. So we can touch this on the issues and next meetings, of course. So that's good. So for more issues that you want to raise, it's going to be good if you have more. We're going to fill up a good queue here.
Nothing from
I think currently we are done. We surely have more in the future.
Oh, perfect. Let's. So, I think I don't have any other general topics, and my intention is just to give some time for this, going over the status of the Postgres. So let's start it, and whenever you feel if it's too deep or anything, so feel free to join in or not, depending on what you feel like, Patrick. And so, Jenya, Danny, Jackie, do you want to start over this topic?
Yeah, sure. All right. So, like we've been working on transferring our database from MongoDB to Postgres, and currently we are at the ending stages, I assume. I hope so, at least. And what we did last week is we've rewrote the whole aggregation framework and did something much more simplistic. We added a group by to our interface and rewrote some of our MongoDB aggregations to use simple queries in order to kind of limit our aggregation framework usage. So what we have right now is a group by in our. Should I maybe also show the code in the background, or should I just talk without anything visual? How do you think that?
Yeah, you can. I mean, from my point of view, this should help with your questions and where you are. So it will be great if you want to share where you are. And,
yeah, sure. I will share my screen.
I'm stopping my.
Just a second. All right, so I'll share my code. All right, cool. Can you see my sharing?
It's loading. Yeah, please zoom a little bit. Increase the font size.
Sure. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's good.
One less, maybe. Is it fine?
No, the better one more, but you can take off the panel maybe. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So as you know, we've transferred using TypeScript. Here in the TypeScript, you can see our basic interface for the DB client, and also our interface for the DB collection, and other things regards to that. So you can see that we've added a group by instead of aggregation, and this group by is currently used by several. I'm sorry. Let me just try to do that. It's kind of. So let's go to NB store group by. All right. So this is an example of a group by that we use for a count object per bucket. So basically, we've stayed with the same API like the aggregation, but we've limited it to the first block is the match, and the second block is the group by. And what the Postgres client does, it just creates a single query which has group by. So it just creates a single query and does that in a single query instead of doing that like we did previously with the aggregation framework, which consisted of multiple queries and multiple temporary tables. So this is like a simplistic solving to the problem that we have. So and the MongoDB client, what it does is just uses this group by and just triggers an aggregate function with match and group, and as simple as that. Regarding other things, we rewrote some of the other group-based aggregations that we had to use count documents, estimated count, estimated query count, which is for Mongo is just calling functions and existing functions. And in our case, in the Postgres client, we implemented some functions that do an estimation on that. So this is in regards to the group by to the aggregation rewrites. So what we
can you show the line? I mean, I see that the line is long, but also from perspective of how to write it, can you focus on this line for a second?
Sure, yeah. So yeah, this is in how the Postgres uses the group by. So we have a match and a group, and what we do is we create a where clause, which is the match, and the group. I've reused some of our previous aggregation framework parsing. So implemented a function here which parses using the Mongo API. So basically, we support only like 3 aggregations that we need right now, which is the sum, the max, and the push, and it kind of translates to Postgres language. And then what we do is we return the select and the group by that we need to do on the collection, and we just trigger this call using just select, using the select that we have. And where is the where clause, and the group by is the group by that we are grouping by, which is basically the resource ID in some cases, but it's basically the ID. And we just return the rows that we have. So currently, because we know how we did not interfere with the types and stuff like that, so basically now we assume that we have simple aggregations.
Is the P group, is it actually constant?
No, it is something that we receive from this function. This is the function that
when we call it, do we have any? So what I'm thinking is this: are we changing how the information that we select or the groups that we're using?
Yeah, obviously. If you are sending here, for example, on the group by, you are sending the group object. So each group object will have a different selects and different
so go to MD store for a second. Show me one of the calls. Like let's look at the call we had. Is the group piece here any, like it seems like it's fixed. It's a constant object. You see what I'm saying?
It is a constant object, but this is for this query. So we have other group bys that have different objects, right? This is
for
not
group as well.
Yes, of course.
Okay.
So
let's look at it. Just show me one.
Yeah, sure.
I'm interested to see where we have it, maybe.
So yes, we have another group by here, which you can see that we have here the push operator, operand, and the sum and the max. So
but it's still, you see that it's still a fixed object.
It is an object, right? It's always an object.
No. I'm saying it's constant. It's not changing. So what I'm saying, it doesn't change based on the arguments that you get for this flow. It's something that is related to the flow itself that is fixed in the flow. This is how you group by in this flow, right?
Yeah, obviously. You are not passing here any arguments, right? This is a constant object, right? You are right about this. But each flow calls group by with different constant objects, right?
That's okay. But what I'm saying is that eventually we will have just the number of flows, number of group bys. So maybe what we should do is that we can keep these objects parsed already, not have them reparsed every time, right?
I mean,
so let me describe my suggestion. I'm not saying that you can't have a mode where this is completely dynamic, but I think this is not the mode we want to use most times in groups. This is how, I mean, when you have a data modeled this way, even your groups are modeled in a fixated way in the sense of runtime, not in design time, of course. In design time, you're flexible to change anytime, but in runtime, you get to a point where you just need to enumerate your groups, your group by configurations, and then apply them just in runtime.
Yeah, we can have an actual, like, for example, like we did with the MapReduce when we had a function. So we can also, like, here in the group by, we can also have some sort of enum or something that tells us which group by are we interested in, and Mongo client will just pass the group by using the match query like it does always, and the Postgres client will have some like templates for the P group
So
template.
I would define it maybe define the groups in the define collection.
Okay. I mean, yeah, it is a possibility, but this kind of opens up a different API for define collection and define like table, right? So, for example, the Postgres will have this option, and the Mongo won't have this option.
Why not? It will still no. So let's think about it this way. So go to define collection for a second, where we use it maybe somewhere like MD store, right? Where we call it.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Here. Yes.
Yeah. So we have like the name, the schema, the DB indexes. So my suggestion would look like this. If we have here a map of groups, and each group has a name versus an object, right? And the name is then used when you call group by. You say,
I understand. I got you.
Okay,
yeah.
so Mongo, when it defines the collection, will keep that group in the same format that it did before.
And here I will just take from the map, and instead of sending here the group, I will just send here from the map, like the prepared object, right? Yeah, we can do that. Sure, we can do that, but you need to understand that this is kind of for a user that comes up from MongoDB, from knowing how to define collections using MongoDB. He won't be able to know that define collection supports this kind of operation, right? We use something that is not documented in the define collection. I mean, if we want to stick up to Mongo using define collection,
I didn't. Oh, so maybe if you think this is the confusion, so maybe we can change it. But I didn't mean define collection to be Mongo's define collection. It wasn't ever meant to be. It was meant for us to define a collection for our, let's say, ORM, or like the mapping that we do, right? We have chunks, we map that to database, right?
I understand that by doing this, we can like skip all of this mapping and all of this like time that we waste for every aggregation for group by. I mean, here where we use the $push, for example, like doing all of those operations, right?
I'm not sure it's really a problem. I mean, it really just a small optimization. So I think it's useful, and I think in many cases groups are, and even in general, selects are not really something that is dynamic, and even a lot of databases make them static, like views with couch base and things like that. Okay,
we can do that. Sure.
So nice. So now we have all these group bys running as actual select, actual queries.
Yeah,
that's good.
A single query instead of doing previously. We've created like lots of temporary tables, and then just used like lots of queries for every stage of the aggregation. We used one temporary table and one query, which means that for an aggregation of match and group by, we used two temporary tables and two queries. So now we use one query, and that's it, without any temporary table or something like that.
Right. So we started this because we saw that the group by was the major aggregation we used, right? Not just because we, I mean, aggregation in general is very nice, but we wanted to make a more specific case for Postgres to work with group by. So that's working now. And you also added something else you said before about the estimations. Did you do anything with it? We talked about it once.
So we talked about estimations, and I did some stuff regarding the estimations, but I did not, since we are currently running on indexes, I will need to change that. So I kind of don't want to get into that, but we do know how to estimate like the number of rows, for example, rows. Just estimate. Here you can see that this is an estimation of the number of rows in the documents itself. So we use the PG class, which is some sort of a class within the Postgres, which is like a default class, and it has some sort of like statistics regarding rows and stuff, and other things regarding tables. So we just pulled the tuples from this PG class, and it tells us the estimation of the number of rows in the collection. But in order to do that, we need to run analyze and vacuums on our collections, because this is like the operation of vacuum verb analyze is the operation that actually updates all of the histograms and the statistics of the Postgres, which allows us to do these estimations. So this is something that I've also added that just runs every day, once a day. It runs and does the analyze and the vacuum on all of the tables that we have. I did this just like once a day right now, but obviously we will do it more complex in the future, and we will have like times that let the user configure probably when he wants to do those, because it is a heavy operation to analyze the table. And
Can't we set it? Can we set it as a policy for the database to run?
Yeah, there should be some configuration for the database to run, but
because this is running from all of our pods this way, right?
Yes, this runs in our in the pods that communicate with the database, which is our main pod, right? The noobaa-core. We don't have any communication from
no, all the endpoints communicate.
Oh yeah, you're right. The endpoints as well. Yeah. All right.
Yeah, everything. So, but from that perspective, I think maybe if you can find, I mean, it's not important, but going forward, maybe you can look up configuration.
Yeah, of course. There is a configuration. I just didn't want to invest a lot of time in it, so I did
put it to do, maybe just run it to do here, maybe for you to not forget to look for Postgres configuration for that. Maybe it'd be easier for us to set it in the operator, I think.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry. So
do you have an alternative, by the way, to that? Do we have other means of estimation? And also, I think you also had a case where we needed estimation for query and not just for an entire table, right?
Yeah. So regarding the estimations on query, this is something that. What do you mean estimations on query, like explain, or what do you mean?
No, we used it for the estimating. Oh, so we changed that, estimating dedupe keys and all that. I think we changed it, right? We wanted to change it.
We are going to change it, and this is why I did not cover this up right now. Because as part of our indexes and stuff that I'm currently implementing is we will change that as well. So this is why I've covered only without the query, the estimation on the whole rows. So yeah, so this is an example of the indexes. All right, so I will continue.
But wait, Jenny, we have just 3 more minutes, and I will have to stop on time. So let us just maybe let's stop for a second and go back to the agenda, because otherwise we will not have any way of summarizing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure. I stopped presenting.
So I'm jumping to the agenda, and we can summarize what you're saying over there as well. I think you can see. So I think we saw aggregation. We didn't get to transactions in any case. So maybe let's separate. So Mongo aggregations, aggregation, and move to group by. And transactions.
So in regards to Mongo aggregation move to group by, we should also probably add the fact that we try to remove the number of aggregations that we have currently in the logs in the code and replace some of them with estimation of rows, right? This is also like a part of this task.
So you mean like the count, estimate number of objects per bucket, things like that?
Yeah. So this is also, it came up from us trying to remove unnecessary aggregations that we have, right?
Mm-hmm. So move to group by and change to estimates where possible. Okay. Transactions we'll maybe cover next time. Indexes, so that's another thing we want to cover next time, maybe, right?
Yeah.
Is there any specific thing that you have already with indexes? Is it working for you in any way, or you?
I have the code running right now. I've created all of the indexes, and I also tested it with several queries and saw that they are actually hidden the indexes without hints. So I just need to test it across all of the queries, which is right now. For example, I have a running system. I can show you for a second. If
I don't have enough time. I'm sorry. I think we need to
we
wrap
have
up. So yeah.
61 indexes running right now, and this is I just need to test one by one each one and every query that triggers them in order to understand if we actually hit them. So this is what I've been working
So you
about.
do you have any a test for it? Something that automatically verifies it, maybe?
So I've tried to work on a test, and then I found some problems with our transactions, which kind of kills up the for me to write the test. So I've started fixing some problems with transactions, and this is the case D. And yeah, so this is kind of what I've been working on right now. And now Danny is also comes to this, and we'll handle this together on with it.
So let me wrap up briefly here. So we covered this first thing, and we will cover next time. We'll try to cover these as well, or what is left from them, right, until we get to the next meeting next week. And yeah, so I think that's it. I think it's been really productive. Thank you. Thank you guys for sharing all the information about your issues. It's been really helpful. And let's wrap up and meet next week so we can follow up. Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you very much. You too, guys.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Have a great evening. Bye.